an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Grey Sister. Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and prologue. In these chapters, I am really taken aback by the fact that Nona is just still at the convent and still in classes. I did not expect that based on the way the last book ended. I kind of thought when she turned up all raggedy and bonkers looking with her black ass eyes that maybe this was going to be it for her. I was wrong. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Martin for commissioning this episode. Martin is in the chat. And thank you again to Martin for flexibility. I had a scan. Those of you who come to my crowdcasts and watch me on camera have doubtless noticed that I have a facial twitch on one side of my face. And I am trying to get that figured out. So I had to schedule it and move him back. But he is very flexible and I appreciate it. So this book, I'm pretty excited about it. Okay. So first of all, I want to acknowledge Mark Lawrence does this thing in this book that I wish so many more authors would do, where he puts at the start, before even the prologue, the story so far and gives us a brief rundown of what happened last book. Why doesn't everybody do this? I know that the whole thing is supposed to be, well, you're supposed to have read the previous book. Yeah, I have read the previous book. And yet, despite that, authors insist on explaining to me in these awkward exposition-y paragraphs what happened last book in dialogue between characters that very well know what happened last book, also should know better than I because they were there. And yet, they like, shove that in my face like I didn't just read it. And I would like to point out that the story so far section pointed out a couple things that I didn't quite get the first time around. So it was not only helpful in that it avoided the awkwardness of painful dialogue that I hate reading. It always feels so unnatural. But it also helped to crystallize a couple of things that I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, no. Okay. Oh, God, I've been wrong about this. Okay. So I just want to talk about it a little, and I'm not going to take up too much of our time with this. But first of all, I really enjoy this. You may find yourself wondering about Kia when he is mentioned. You are supposed to wonder. You will find out. He's not mentioned in book 1. Thank you. Thank you. See? I did wonder. She just mentions him like Kia started talking, and I was like, what? Who? What do you... And then I remembered that he said this, and I was like, oh, right. That's why this name is ringing a bell when I look at it right now. Also, Abbess is a planet orbiting a dying red sun. It is sheathed in ice, and many of its people live in a 50-mile-wide ice-walled corridor around the equator. Now, is this information we were given previous book? Yes. Did I quite put together that the dying sun was like the reason that the ice was closing in? Even though it's super obvious, no, I did not. Because I am out here still thinking about climate change and shit. And thinking about this in a way, like in a modern way, versus, oh, the sun's dying. It's not as hot. It's very simple. Also, 50 miles being like, you know, it's just being mentioned that is the amount of space we have to work with. Helpful. This is all really nice. It's been, a few weeks since I finished Red Sister. It was helpful. This one, though, in particular. When thousands of years ago, the 4 original tribes of men came to Abbess from the stars, they found the ruins of a vanished people. They call them missing. What? They came from the stars? How did I miss this? I must have. because it's written here as if it has been said in that way before. So I trust that this is my, oversight. This planet is basically, it's been inhabited by aliens. And that is what they're talking about when they're talking about the ship hearts. These things are like nuclear powered, like spaceship engines. This is way more advanced shit than what I was picturing. It might be, I'm saying nuclear power. It might be just magic, whatever, it's fine. But I just never thought of it that way. So the fact that the ships are gone, we don't know where they, I completely thought that this was there's a land that was being enclosed by ice somewhere else. And they came to this larger landmass that was safer and more central on the equator of the planet because that place was being overrun with ice and they had to get somewhere. I had no idea that this was fucking outer space settling on a planet. And that's why there are these 4 types of people, which they're basically different races, right? Full on different races. I thought they were different aspects of human beings in this world. No, not so. They are completely separate. And I didn't get that at all. So, the empire's nobility are the cis. The suffix is attached to the name of the ennobled families, e.g. Toxis, Jotsis, etc. Also did not know that. I didn't remember it. And I'm not saying any of this to be Mark Lawrence, you didn't explain your shit right. I'm just saying that I was focusing on other things while I was reading, and to have these bits broken down for me, I just really, really appreciate it. And then there's the section about the 4 original tribes. And this has been highlighted by, according to Kindle, over 100 people. So this is the summary of who these different 4 tribes are. The Garant grow large, the Hunska are swift, the Marzal manifest minor to medium magics, including shadow weaving, sigil writing, and mastery of elements. The Quantal can access the raw power of the path and manipulate the threads that are woven to create reality. Nice little summary. Good thing to be able to bookmark and keep and refer back to if I do forget what each of these guys does. So I really appreciated these little reminders about this world and how this is structured and all of this. So I really, I appreciated this because not only did it give me an idea about the, some facts that I didn't know, but it got me back into the brain that I need to be in to read these books. And I feel that's key when there's a bit of time between books. It's really difficult to just start a new one of a series and be I've kind of lost track of what this is like, and I'm going to have to let myself get back into it again, in this really deliberate way. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you to Mark Lawrence for this, and appreciate that the editors did not maybe give him trouble on doing this. Just overall good call. So, and it ends with book 1 ended with Nona having just killed Raymel Taxis in the wilds. Sister Kettle and Apple were recently watching over novices, but Kettle was poisoned by a Noigwin assassin tracking Nona, and Apple has gone to her aid. So we go into the prologue. The dissolution of any monastery or convent is not something to be lightly undertaken. Even the might of House Toxis, whose line was born of emperors, may not suffice. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. I don't like this start. They're out here trying to dismantle shit. You know what? I'm sick of these rich people. Can we all just agree? Says who? Who the fuck are you? Get out of my face. I'm over it. I'm done. Ugh, disgusted. Noigwin walked with Lanotoxis. And there's this thing about how the Noigwin are they're stripped of their humanity, essentially. And they are given their tasks of taking life. And 1 is usually sufficient. 2 for somebody really tough. Using 3 is practically unheard of except in ancient stories where they're up against like legendary baddies. 8 walked with Lanotoxus the day he came to the convent. 8. Even the oldest stories never speak of more than 5. Sorry. None living remembered more than 3 acting together. That's what it was. So yeah, this motherfucker has 8. And I love that. I don't know at this point that the 8 are just for Nona. I assume they are, because that was who they were hired to kill the first time. And they failed. And then they sent 2 right off the bat the first time. I love the idea that the Noi Gwyn are maybe starting to take it a little personally that she got away a bunch of times now, and that they're just like, just send like half of them. I don't know. We've got, how many we have that are free that aren't on missions? 8. Send them all. I don't know that that's why. Lano might have taken 8 to deal with, if he's, as it says, dissolving a convent, maybe it's 8 to deal with all of the sisters that are there. But I'm going to just like kind of cling to the fact that maybe it's Nona. I'm hoping that's what it is, because it's, how badass is that? So Lano is talking to a figure that we don't see right away, asking, "Are you sure that it's Nona? Return to sweet mercy? I feared she had gone despite my instructions." "It's her, you're sure?" Clara Gomel lifted her dark eyes to him. "Of course. Which other would let me go?" So, I think I misunderstood at the end of the last book, when Nona turns up and Arabella is in the middle of her fight with Clara. By the time Nona comes to Sweet Mercy and helps out Clara, the 2 years has passed. Is that correct? And she comes in to help after she has managed to sort of fight down Kyo? Or did she come back to the... She describes like having some rages and some trouble fighting down this devil while she's still at school, like that she's trying to manage this. So maybe because she says something about how she like had gone wild for like a couple of years. And I thought of that as when she says gone wild, I just keep thinking of Girls Gone Wild, but I kept picturing that as her being like out in the world trying to get a hold of herself and then coming back to the convent. But does she come back to the convent right away and then while there figure out that she's like possessed and trying to figure out how to manage it? I'm just not sure about the timeline. Okay. Martin says, we don't know how far in the future this is happening. Okay, so it's unclear how this all fell out. Okay, well, as long as I know that I am not meant to know, that's fine. Sister Cage waited shadowless among the shadows of the pillars. The old nuns and young novices watched from within the stone forest behind her. When the Toxis came and the blood began to flow, Sister Rose would still be fighting her own battle somewhere back there, striving to save Sister Thorn from her injuries. Sister Clara had left Thorn bleeding. She could have killed her in a moment, but she didn't. At least there was that. I like this. Despite it all, Nona can't help but try and see the good in what's going on with Clara. And we get a little bit of a hint that, Clara doesn't like Arabella. So if she didn't kill her, it's likely because there's a little bit of her that's still salvageable that doesn't really want to be doing what she's doing. And it wouldn't mean quite as much to me that she didn't kill Nona as it does that she didn't kill Arabella, because Arabella is somebody that she just straight up didn't really like. And it would be very easy to, but the fact that there's something about not hurting, or she did hurt, not killing Ara, that makes me feel as if that is her concession to Nona, honestly. And the holy disdain anger for what faith is not at its core, about acceptance of things you cannot change. The wise call wrath unwise, for few truths are to be found there. Those who rule us stamp upon rage, for they see it clearly, knowing it for the fire that it is, and who invites such angry flames among that which they possess? To Sister Cage, though, fury was a weapon. She opened herself to the anger she had held at bay. Her friend lay dying. Her friend. There is a purity in rage. It will burn out sorrow, for a time. It will burn out fear. Even cruelty and hatred will seek shelter. Rage wants none of them, only to destroy. Rage is the gift our nature gives to us, shaped by untold years. Why discard it? Every law of church or state seeks to separate you from your anger. Every rule is there to tame you, to take from your hands that which you should own. Okay. Low-key, I don't know that this is correct, but it feels really true, like in my bones. And this is one of those things that right now, there are so many people who, and I've talked about, I'm not going to get, too deep into commentary on what's going on in our world right now, because honestly, why? But I will say that there is a certain elitism in people trying to suggest that having a lot of rage is not conducive to change, that we should all be focused on our action rather than our rage, as if rage does not lead to action. And there's also, in my opinion, a bit of an elitism about behaving as if violence is not the answer. Listen, I don't love violence any more than the average person. But to behave as if massive changes in our society and upheavals in injustice and systems that were founded in the oppression of people were not overturned out of violence is absurd. I mean, that is the only thing that has ever defeated systems of oppression is violence. Nobody's ever been like, hey, if you really think about it, what you're doing to us is pretty unjust. Can you not? And the people doing it were like, you know what? Nobody's ever really put it that way. You're right. No, never. It's never happened. The people who were being oppressed had to get angry and use that anger to organize. And that anger was behind it all. That anger was real and valid and necessary. So I get just disgusted when I am faced with people who are offering these mealy-mouthed sort of platitudes about managing your desire for violence. We don't need more management of our emotions. That's part of why we're here. We need to follow through on the reason behind those very valid emotions and look at what we're living in and how we got here and do something. And if it requires violence, so be it. That's nobody's first choice almost ever when it comes to in the United States, when we are dealing with systems of oppression. The majority of people, their instinct is to go via lawful channels and try and change legislation, try and do this and that. That's fine. That's what we have attempted many times. But there comes a point where you begin to realize that's not affecting the change the way you need it to. And fighting for it is the thing. I just get, I think rage is a gift. And I get very, very disgusted with people who have a sort of like, sort of an attitude about like, you're getting your hands dirty if you let yourself experience it, or if you let that inform your actions. If you're not letting how you feel about injustice inform your actions, then what are you even doing? What are you living? How are you living? If there's no passion behind what you're doing, if you don't have a fire because you believe something so completely and are willing to do something dangerous for it, if you aren't willing to risk anything for what you believe, do you believe it? Do you? Like, so anyway, Martin in the chat, LOL, you mad, bro? Yes, I fucking am, you racist shitbag. There you go. You know, like, and I'll tell you guys, I am not a person who has been in fights. That's not the kind of life that I have led, or I have been lucky to avoid that kind of thing. So I'm not speaking as a person who's out here getting in fights all the time. But I'll tell you what, there have been some moments lately where I've been itching for it. I have been in situations that could have gone one way, and they wound up going the other way, and it all wound up okay. But don't be surprised if you find out in a couple of years I've been arrested, is all I'm saying. This is certainly in the cards for me at some point. So this whole like paragraph about anger just really fucking spoke to me. I loved it so much. The anger that sits like broken glass within a chest, the anger that will allow no sleep, no retreat, no compromise. Love it. So, chapter 1. There are many poisons that will induce madness, but none perhaps quite so effective as love. Sister Apple carried 100 antidotes, but she had drunk that particular draught of her own free will, knowing there was no cure. I like it. It's a little corny. Yes, don't care. I like it. I was very touched at the relationship between Apple and Kettle. Like, we've known that they are together, but getting to actually see them together and expressing how they feel for each other was really, really sweet. And it made me like a little bit teary-eyed, I'm not going to lie. So she has heard the call for help. And she is heading towards this call with a single-mindedness that has basically caused her to lose. She has focused so much on that she has lost focus on everything around her that can get in the way of her reaching her goal. So she winds up getting jumped on by a group because she wasn't really paying enough attention. And later on, she's thinking about these dudes and how if she had actually been aware of her surroundings, if she had been focused on what she was doing in the way she has been trained, she could have just gone around them and none of this would ever have needed to happen. But because she was so fucking caught up in anxiety and worry because she loves somebody who is in danger, she just like kind of discards training that should be second nature to her now. So there are these 5 Dernishmen and they get in her way, and she's like for a second weighing whether or not she can just run past them because they're far enough that they can't really like grip her up yet. But they have spears, they have arrows. They would be able to take her down if she ran. So she realizes that she has to figure out an alternative way through this situation. It is dope. This is one of my favorite sequences because of how unfamiliar it is. This is a way of fighting that we have not seen yet. We have seen these like, you know, Hunska speed and you know, using the path and the threads and all of that before. This is shit that like we as regular old fucking people in our world could do if we knew the recipes necessary. So she reaches into her jacket and she has this like little pill. She drew her hands out, a wax capsule of boneless in one, a wrap of gray mustard in the other, and a small white pill between finger and thumb. She popped the pill into her mouth, hoping it was Bitterwill. Because she can't look down, she can't open her pockets and fucking pick through shit. They're in front of her watching her, and she has to do this all so quickly that they almost don't notice it or don't assign any particular significance to it. So one of them asks if she's a nun. He can tell, her habit. And she says, yes, a holy sister. Perhaps one nun in 100 was anything other than a holy sister. But with the stories told in Durn, they couldn't be blamed for thinking every woman in a habit was a red sister or a holy witch just itching to blast them to smoking ruin. I don't know if holy witch is trademarked, but I low-key want to put holy witch in my Facebook bio. Just saying. I'm really digging that combo. So she's trying to manipulate these guys into getting close enough that she can use her weapons on them. Her weapons being these poisons. And we find out a little bit later that the pill she swallowed is to protect her from the effects of the boneless. And they are coming at her. She starts to sort of like pretend to be scared and have a little bit of backbone, but just enough backbone that it like draws them out, and not enough that they really attack her, but they need to get closer. She needs to pull them in. And finally they do. And they slap her, and she has like her hands in a, like, okay, I'm just going to read this. Apple feigned panic, raising her hands to intercept those that reached for her, but offering too little resistance to invite blows. One of the pair seemed to need no excuse and slapped her anyway, a hard, calloused hand across the face. Both men were smeared with the clear, boneless syrup now, sticky on their fingers. I love this. They just keep on, like, walking into this trap so easy, and they have no idea. I don't know how much people outside of the convent are aware of the types of things these nuns study. I would be very interested to hear what the public at large knows, So this dude is like trying to twist her arm behind her back, but the boneless is beginning to take effect. And everybody around them is just like, oh shit, she's real strong because she's able to hold her own against this guy. And they don't realize that he's been poisoned. And finally, there's this one other guy who comes at her once he realizes that the other two are about to go down for some reason. And he has to step in. She wrenched her fist to her face as the officer reached them. She blew through her closed hand. A short, sharp puff, and a cloud of powder from the crushed wrap bloomed around the man's head. The edge of the cloud caught the archer just behind him. True terror loaned Apple the strength to throw herself backwards, falling from the Dern's clutches to the rutted mud. She had seen what gray mustard could do, and nothing in her array of antidotes would reduce the pain and disfigurement of it to an acceptable level. So this is like mustard gas, right? These guys begin to basically claw off their own faces, which is the worst thing I've ever heard. And they inhale the spores as well, which I imagine does even worse shit to your insides. It sounds horrifying. So she manages to take all of these dudes down, and the only two that are actually left alive in the end are the two that got hit with the boneless. And I really liked this, like, this mention of the fact that she doesn't really have the stomach to murder people. It's not just that these guys are disabled and helpless on the ground. these other 3 that she killed, she wasn't happy about it. You know, this isn't something that she enjoys. Nona, a different story. But she tells these guys, she took 2 purple pills from her habits. Sisters of discretion are supposed to pass unseen and be impossible to take unawares. It's all very embarrassing. I won't tell if you won't. If nobody finds and kills you before we can move again, and believe me, you deserve to be found and killed, which I just love that because she sounds like a teacher, then my advice is to run all the way back to your boat. So she puts this groundwort into their stomachs. It would make them sick for a week, a month if they swallowed too much. I assume that is just to keep them from getting up and running after her the way that they would if she had left them alive otherwise. At first, I thought she was giving them something to, like, deactivate the boneless, and then I was like, she wouldn't do that because they're after her. Why would she do that? So, she manages to, like, find Kettle. And as she's, like, trying to find her, all she can think about is how bad it must be for Kettle to have called out to her at all. Kettle is a rule follower. Kettle is somebody who manages to compartmentalize how she's feeling and do what needs doing and follow instructions. So the fact that she has called for Apple and asked her to break the formation they're supposed to be in means some shit has gone very left. And she finally finds Kettle and thinks at first that Kettle is dead. And it is, as she gets closer, more and more clear that the Noi Gwyn have been around. Let's see. She had been careless before. Her haste had delivered her into the hands of men she could have stepped around unnoticed if she had kept her focus. When the shadows answered her will, it felt as if she had remembered some name that had long escaped her. Other shadow magic had been worked within the woods. The empty spaces shivered with the echoes of it. Kettle's cry lay there, sharp and deep, but other traces too, the sour workings of the Noi Gwyn. Apple had tasted their like before, back at Sweet Mercy, on the night Thorintoxis had sent 2 of them to kill Nona. Quite how they had failed in that task was beyond her. So, I found that really interesting, that there is, like, a sort of like flavor left in the air after somebody does something with shadow that she can detect, and that if she has encountered it before, she can identify. That's pretty cool. Like that's a really helpful skill. I like that. I think that's really interesting. So then they have this moment where it becomes clear that there is there was a poison on the blade. And whatever it is, Kettle is almost definitely going to die. Dark venom is what it's called. And this is something that sort of like blackens the veins in her arms as it penetrates. What I keep thinking of is Dark Willow on Buffy and the way that she would look when she started to go bad. And this is, kind of something that is impossible to counter. She doesn't have the stuff to do this. I'm not sure if there exists stuff to do this. And Apple tells Kettle, I have to push you into shadow. And Kettle says no. And begins to protest about the ancestor. I was like, what does she mean? And then we get the explanation. Apple gathered the darkness around her hands until even to her night-born sight they were holes cut in the shape of her body without depth or contrast. The Noi Gwyn pushed the best of their killers into the shadow as far as their minds could bear it. It broke some of them. Others were lost in the dark places behind the world. But the price Kettle feared to pay was her soul. The church taught that those who walked too far into the shadow would never join the ancestor in unity. Sister Wheel says the ancestor fuck Wheel and fuck the ancestor. Apple set one hand to Kettle's chest, kneeling above her, ready to push. You're mine, and I won't lose you. Let me do it. Her mouth twitched, and the words came out broken. Please. And Kettle tells her, poisoner, poison me. And Apple presses down with her palm and with the other drew the assassin's knife from the wound, pulling with the steel and blood and inky venom born of the darkness that dwells between stars. What? This venom is basically like the void of the universe? Is that true? That's dope. That's pretty crazy. I don't know if I'm reading that completely correctly, but I'm here for it. Strap in, ladies and gents. Okay, so chapter 2, 2 years later. We meet this fucking bitch. Oh, I hate her so much. Joelle Nemesis. Joelle is what everybody was afraid Arabella was going to be. Joelle is a spoiled brat with a spiteful nature who enjoys tormenting people and has a very close alliance, her family does, with Thorontaxis. Therefore, she targets Nona very specifically because she knows that the Toxis do not care for Nona and that they want her dead. So she's just trying to make trouble for Nona. And we find out later that maybe the whole thing about getting Nona kicked out of the convent is like the ultimate goal here in order to make Nona vulnerable, because they have learned, the Toxis have learned, that trying to get at Nona in the convent, it ain't gonna work. They tried it. They tried it a couple times. Glass ain't having it, son. So now they're like, well, what if we got her outside of the convent? We get her kicked out, then we figure this out. I mean, can't fault them for that plan. It makes sense, and it almost works. It comes real close. And I just want to slap and shake Nona, like, girl, oh my God, you don't see what she's doing? It's so obvious what she's trying to fucking do to you. But Nona is not entirely in her right mind. So, I get it. So yeah, Joelle is out here, like, insinuating that she thinks Nona's a servant. Just overall, there's a bunch of things that, like, she throws at her immediately to try and cut her down to size. And here comes this moment that is so creepy. Nona is being threatened by Joelle. She's like, maybe I should teach you another lesson. And she's got her, like, thread work, because apparently she's really good at that. I would like to register my displeasure that somebody who is so obviously against Nona is really good at thread work, because that seems unfair. I don't like that. Thread work is, like, for me, probably the scariest of all the talents. You are fucking with the fabric of reality. Like, no. I don't want her being able to manage that shit. And she's supposed to be, like, the most powerful of the thread workers in the convent. Which, like, it says in the convent. It doesn't say of the novices. In the convent. No. Dislike. Thumbs down. Would not recommend. So, she's threatening Nona. And Nona says, I love you as a sister. And when we die, we will be mixed together in the ancestor. Or no, we won't be mixed. When we die, we will be together in the ancestor, our bloods mixed. A warmth spread across her back as Kiot sank into her flesh. And this is the moment where I'm like, what now? A moment later, he had wrapped himself around her tongue. But I must warn you, sister, that a sickness runs in me, and if you fashion yourself my enemy, I will make a ruin of your life, for I am born of war. So Joelle has a little moment where she's like, oh, fuck. But then immediately covers it with laugh and makes it like, oh my God, you're so dramatic. Get out of here. Oh, born of war. And honestly, that's a pretty good way to play it, making it seem like it's ridiculous. But you can tell that, like, there's a flicker in there of her wondering what the fuck is going on. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to really hit her that this is for real. She does not continue on as afraid of Nona as she should be. I, however, am too distracted to give a shit about Joelle at this moment because I want to know who the fuck Kia is. Kia, and I'm curious if, Mark Lawrence, I know that you have been listening to some of these episodes. Do you get a say in the audiobook pronunciation of names? Because I would be very interested in... I've listened to different audiobooks of the same book where things are pronounced very, very differently. And in a lot of those cases, the differences are one audiobook was recorded like 2 decades earlier than the other. And thus, I feel like the standardization of audiobooks maybe wasn't as established back when the first one was done as they are now. So do you get to tell people how to pronounce things? Kia is said in that way in the book, but I don't know that's correct. Kia, if you guys have a couple of extra Audible credits, I have obviously I'm reading from it. I have the Kindle version and the Audible version. This audio narrator, I love her. And when she does Kiat's voice, it is awesome. I don't even know if I can imitate it quite well, but it's, "You should let me. That bitch means trouble for you." Like, it's this almost nasal, guttural, ooh, it's real good. I just love it. And she just dips into it and then dips right back out again. It's great. And so when I heard that voice as Kia, because when it's said in the first time it's coming out of Nona's mouth. So that whole thing about Born of War is spoken with Nona's voice. But when we come here to the italicized internal dialogue, she uses that voice. And I was just like, oh, fuck, it's a devil. You just know immediately. It was so effective. So this poor bitch fucking killed, which one? Raymel? Ramel's the one that was possessed, right? And it's Lauren who's the one that's after her now. I need to make myself a little list. She manages to kill this guy. It takes so much to kill him. It's too much. It's not fair. And she finally manages to kill this guy. And yet, she still can't just get away scot-free. And it wouldn't have been scot-free anyway, man. She drank that fucking, black cure. It fucked her eyes all up. She cut her shadow off to try and, save Hessa. She has sacrificed already. But no, that's not enough. She still has more shit to go. So now this devil has gotten inside of her, and it turns out the others left his body and basically jumped into shadow where they live in between possessing people's bodies. I am not positive that we ever get the backstory on exactly how they possessed him in the first place. I'm very curious about it. But she, it turns out, had this weakness that it was able to exploit, and this last one goes inside of her. And that weakness is the enjoyment that she felt when she was stabbing the fuck out of Raymel. It was a bloodlust. It was a joy in violence. And that was how this thing got inside her. I think that makes total sense, and I am here for it. And it also, because of that, makes sense that Raymel Taxis would have fucking 4 of them inside him, because he was a cruel sadist who enjoyed hurting people. So he's going to be wide open for these fucking things to get in. That makes sense, you know? Martin says, it was when the mages kept him alive in the shadow realm, similar to Apple did to Kettle after Nona stabbed him right at the start. Oh, I forgot that they had to do that. I hope that nothing happens to Kettle. Don't get possessed, Kettle. Do me a favor. Interesting. Okay. I forgot about that. So I'm hoping that Kettle doesn't have the weaknesses that he had or that Nona has, apparently. But yeah, I'm all about it. Then Zoli comes in, getting back to the confrontation between Joelle and Nona. Zoli comes in. Joelle starts to be like, oh, another one? I just can't. But Zoli is too admired by everyone. She is the chosen one. She is the four-blood. She is one of those people that just never gives anybody her approval, and therefore everybody wants it all the more, is really the vibe that you kind of get, because she's so talented and so important, but she just doesn't take notice of anybody. So I think in a lot of ways, everybody kind of wants to be the one that she actually likes and be friends. Nona feels the closest to that, and it's kind of hilarious that she's the closest when the two of them don't really like each other. It's just that they both hold themselves apart from normal people. That's the real thing. I think that I don't say they bond over, but they each have that as part of their identity, is that they don't exactly feel like a regular person. And and Nona's different than Zoli in that she has friends. It's not like she is a totally solitary person, but I mean, with everything that's going on with her, she knows that she has to keep some secrets, because otherwise she's just going to get straight up kicked out. It has been made very clear to her throughout all of her classes that being possessed by this demon, this devil, I actually kind of like that it's called a devil rather than demons. But being possessed by this devil, whether or not they're able to actually exorcise it from her body, irrelevant. She will be kicked out either way. I am really interested in whether that's absolutely true, because I don't know if she is aware how much Abbess Glass is pulling for her. And it was Sister Wheel that really hammered it home to her that she would be kicked out. And Sister Wheel's a piece of shit. I hate her. I mean, I just hate her. She's a fundamentalist psycho, and she's homophobic, and she's kind of cruel for like the fun of it. And I don't know that what Abbess or Sister Wheel says will stand in the face of what Abbess Glass decides. Of course, Abbess Glass won't make it totally obvious that she's doing what she wants to do. She will figure out a political way around it. But I would be interested to know. There's a part when we are in the Abbess's head where Kiat gets mentioned, and it was unclear to me whether the Abbess was thinking about Kiat or if that was just for our benefit as readers, because I don't think the Abbess knows, but I'm not really sure what kind of symptoms she displays and whether it's obvious to other people that's what's going on. So, it's like she has her hands turn red at one point when she like starts to fight Joelle. I have to hurry. Holy shit, I am so far behind. I'm sorry, there's so much to talk about, guys. So basically, Joelle is trying to provoke Nona throughout these chapters. And she tries at first to provoke Nona on like a personal level, like, oh, you're a killer and you killed Raymel, and it was like a huge group of you against just him, and tries to make it sound like he was like outmatched and it wasn't a fair fight. Like just garbage, just bullshit. And it irritates Nona, but she's not like really, she knows that everybody else knows better. But finally, she decides to get at her about Hessa. And it comes at the end of a failed Blade Path run. Nona has been doing her the Blade Path at speed in order to get through it. We saw that at the end of the last book. But she is sort of like skipping over parts of it, which when she is speeding through it, which makes Joelle yell out cheating. And that gets to her just enough that she sort of like lands wrong. And in that, it winds up undoing her and she falls before she even like gets to the end. The leap from the last turn of the spiral to the next flattish section was a dangerous one, several yards, risking injury if she missed and struck the pipe in passing. When running, she took the outer path and jumped from the top of the first turn to the second, then to the third, breaking the rules. Cheat! Joelle's cry as Nona took off. Chaos twisted beneath her skin, scalding hot. Both feet hit the bar, but neither met it perfectly. So Kiat fucked her up. Kiat has become basically a personification of the rage that Nona's always had. Kiat, unfortunately, can control what she does sometimes. Like, so when she goes up at Joelle, when Joelle starts to talk shit about Hessa, she tries to act like Hessa was maybe a traitor. It is horseshit. Her hands, Nona's hands, are at Joelle's neck. And she is trying to pull her hands away. She doesn't want to be doing this. And her hands have turned scarlet, where chaos burned across her skin. Can other people see that? I assume they can, because I think it mentions that she, like, when Darla pulls Nona off her, Nona immediately, like, tries to hide her hands in her habit. But I can't imagine that she was able to hide this from, like, has anybody noticed? Has the Abbess noticed? Who knows what this even looks like? How common a thing is this? If they saw that her hands had turned scarlet, would they know what that meant? Is that something that's like common knowledge? Is that, you know, I want to know what people think of this. So Nona gets yanked off of Joelle, even though Kia is in her head being like, fuck her up, rip her throat out. She's like, no. And she doesn't do it, but she did have her hands at her throat. So it looks bad. Darla pulls her off of Joelle, and Joelle gives her this look and then begins to fake choking. And later on, we find out that she has given herself bruising and is faking having this, like, kind of, she tried to strangle me. Like, just this whole fucking charade that she decides to go with in order to try and get her kicked out. Honestly, it's so frustrating because Kiat has this, like, totally understandable desire to simply rip this girl apart. But Kiat fails to understand that Nona is going to be in a lot more danger if she's out there. And I don't know how much that matters to Kiat. I don't know if because Kiat's existence does not depend on Nona's survival. So does Kiat just does Kiat feed off of violence? Does it enjoy that in a way that makes it stronger or feeds it in some way? Is it interested in jumping from Nona to somebody else? Does it have an objective? I don't know. But I find it interesting that it just keeps encouraging violence at the expense of anything else. And I feel like that makes it less of a calculating creature that's got objectives than something that is operating on like an animal instinct and simply spurring Nona to sort of listen to the worst parts of her own nature. Does that make sense? So yeah, I find that really upsetting because Nona already had a bad temper. Like, Nona was already scary at times, and to have Kia urging her on, it's unnecessary. We don't need more of that. She already was like on the edge all the time, guys. So I really enjoy Ara coming and sitting with Nona and being like, so I hear you're making lots of new friends. I wasn't sure that Ara was going to make it at the end of the last book. And there's a part where Nona says something about how she missed Ara being in the bed beside her because now that she's in Mystic, she's in a different like dormitory. And I was like, oh no, is Ara gone? But I felt like if that had been true, it would have been much more at the front of Nona's mind. It was just good to see it, like, for sure, to see that that Ara is okay. And there's this kind of sweet moment with Nona and her friends. Ruli comes over and starts talking about what happened and how she heard what's going on. I just really love that Nona has some support around her as much as she feels separate from everyone. There are people who care about her, you know, that have her back despite everything. I just think that's really touching and it means a lot to her, I'm sure. And, she takes friendship really seriously, and she deserves to have that reciprocated, and I like it. So Joelle is faking this, like, this croaking thing. She needles Nona about the fact that Nona had never even went after Hessa's killer. We find out, by the way, that Yish got away with the ship heart, which I don't think I'd realized that she successfully escaped with it. But it's gone, which I don't know what difference that makes to the classes and the practices that they do here, but it's certainly a huge loss. And I am a little bit concerned at what they want the ship heart for. Because I have a hard time believing it's just like, oh yeah, we just want to, be able to because the ship heart was part of what managed to power a lot of the convent, right? I don't feel like that's all they want it for. They're not just looking for a power source for like day-to-day living. It feels to me like it has to be for something bigger, but I don't know. So she tries to tell everybody I wasn't choking her. I had my hands on her neck, but I didn't even grip. And they all kind of give her a second before Martin says they lost hot water for the baths. Fuck, how did I miss that? That is a nightmare. I am so sorry, everybody. My condolences. I swear to God. Y'all don't even know how important hot baths are to me. Like, sincerely. I lived somewhere without a bathtub, and my water bill was insane because I would just stand in the shower trying to replicate the feeling of being in a hot bath, and it did not work. And I still had access to hot water. It wasn't even the bath. I had not having hot water is like a genuine nightmare. Oh no, fuck! I didn't even realize that. So we have this whole confrontation where, and I love this. We're in Abbess Glass's POV for this in chapter 5, where Joelle is trying to get, obviously, Nona kicked out over this confrontation, and she has faked these bruises, and she's faking this voice, and it is really enjoyable to me that Abbess Glass hates Sister Rael, who is, I think, right in Toxis's pocket. I don't trust Sister Rael as far as I could throw her, and I could throw her pretty fucking far, but that's irrelevant. This bitch is no good. And don't trust her, don't like her, don't want to talk to her. She is just, this woman is a fucking monster. They're talking about getting rid of her. And this bitch is put her in the oven. What? Put that bitch in the oven. Oh my God. I just want to whip her around my head like a fucking, and just let her go. Yeah, so I love that Abbess Glass. I just love being in her POV so much because she's so smart. She's such a fucking badass. Glass does not trust this woman. She knows that Joelle is not to be trusted. And she is trying to find a way to get around kicking out Nona because she understands that Nona is valuable, but she doesn't want to piss off the people behind Joelle either because they are powerful, and Joelle is also individually powerful as a person with the thread work. So she is trying to navigate this in a way that doesn't feel as if she's totally partisan, but also doesn't lead to infighting that could weaken her position and make it seem like she doesn't have unity and a good leadership over the people that she's in charge of. And it's a really difficult thing to sort of navigate. Sister Rael says, reduce the girl to convent helper. That's what she deserves. At the very least, she must be returned to Grey class and whipped before the ancestors' dome. I vote she be whipped and then reduced to helper. Sister Wheel leaned forward, or banished. And the abbess is like, hi, can we hear some evidence first? You guys are very eager and that's all well and good, but maybe we should just fucking calm down for a second. Oh my God. Which, you know what? Thank you. Jesus, these fucking bloodthirsty old hags. Ugh. So she is looking, and it's clear to her that the evidence is all against Nona. She's not an idiot. She knows this does not look good. And if there were anything that was going to unite everybody into like getting, I think it's Sister Rose is the other like high level vote that in combination to the two senior sisters can overrule Glass. But Rose would never really be willing to kick Nona out, except for being for Nona hurting somebody else. Oh, here it is. Nona had done about the only thing that could get Sister Rose to agree with Sister Wheel on something. Yeah, that's it. She wouldn't let a training blade be put in any hand that might seek the life of another novice. Together, both Sister Superiors could overrule the Abbess. That's it. Sister Superiors. So Abbess Glass, finally Sister Kettle pipes up and she asks, are there no witnesses? I want to talk to her so bad about it. Sister Kettle, what made you speak up? Because that's not her place. She is not meant to speak up during one of these. She is out there basically doing like the transcription of what's going on at this meeting. And they all kind of let it slide because she just had come back from this like horrific thing that happened to her. I don't know how she's like just back. I don't know what happened. I don't know. But she's back and there's something to the fact that she speaks up that makes me feel like she is seeing more about what's happening here than anybody. Like, I don't know. It might be just my imagination. So Sister Rail tries to say that, oh yeah, we can summon some of Joelle's friends. And Abbess Glass is like, no, we're not summoning people's friends for fucking like giving evidence. Do you think they aren't going to be swayed by their loyalties? Get out of here. We need somebody who's impartial. And Sister Wheel is the one who's like, how about the chosen one? Not realizing that's exactly who the fuck Glass wants them to choose. So Zoli comes in and she's just like, no, it did not happen that way. Like, yeah, she knocked her down, but she didn't strangle her. Despite this, everybody votes against her. And it's obvious that they're like kind of not comfortable with the fact that they vote against the chosen one, but they comfort themselves with like, well, I'm sure she thinks that she saw what she says she saw, but I'm sure that she missed something and that's not actually what happened. And then I love this so much. All of a sudden, they get interrupted by this fucking judge, Irvone. And we'll get to that in a second. I'm over time. Oh, well, everybody deal with it. So Irvone, he is meant to be the bearer of news that they can't deal with until after this is all settled. I thought for a second that this judge had been summoned by Joelle's family to like be an arbitrator about what happened with Nona, but it turns out that he is like a whole other deal. So let's see, but the bruises, this is nonsense. We should vote and let the Abbess decide. And they're in the middle of voting. And let's see. That's right. Sister Rose says, before she actually casts her vote, I wish you had come to me, Joelle. I have salves that could have helped your poor throat. And she begins to vote. And Abbess Glass is like, wait a second. She didn't come to you? Why didn't you go to her about this if you were so hurt? I mean, you just showed us these horrible bruises around your neck. You can barely speak. And we see from her point of view that there has been a history with Joelle just going to the infirmary for any little thing and trying to stay there for an extended period to get out of classes and stuff. And Sister Apple begins to pick up on this as well and stands up and is like, oh, really? Why didn't you go? That is interesting. And Joelle tries to be like, I didn't want to be a bother. And Apple is like, oh, you didn't, but you're willing to have us all convene and have this hearing and maybe kick somebody out. You're certainly not having a problem with bothering us now. What's the deal? And she then says, show me your hands. Like, she knows. It's like she immediately figures out what's really happening here. And Joelle tries to hide her hands, but Apple grabs them and pulls them up, and she sees these bruises. And I love this so much. Woadwort and burn cotton. Careful preparation makes Ulhin's ointment. And Sister Rose is like, the main side effect of that is severe bruising. And then she looks at Joelle and is like, oh, you didn't. She choked me. Joelle spoke softly and without conviction, staring down at her hands. Sister Apple is like, I have a pill that will get the truth out of you, and begins to leave. And the abbess stops her and is like, absolutely not. They have no role here. We don't have evidence of their accuracy, and we don't have church sanction on them. And Apple kind of gives her this look, and she pretends not to notice. And then it says, sometimes the nun's enthusiasm for her own work overrode common sense. Such cards were not to be revealed or played over novices and before an audience like Ervone Galamsis. Ooh, Apple, did you just tell him about a shit that he didn't know, that you have like truth serum? What are you doing, girl? Shut up. Apple, come on. So they are both sent away. They are going to be basically put in detention for 7 days. And that saves Nona's ass. But then we have to deal with Zoli. And it turns out that Ervone is here on Zoli's family's behalf. Zoli is to be returned to House Lancis and the arms of her mother, the Honorable Scherzel. And reminder, Zoli is the fucking chosen one. As far as they are concerned, she like took oaths here. This is not a thing that you can just drop and go home. She is supposed to stay and complete her training. And all of the sisters are kind of horrified at this. Like, and Abbess Glass is like, why didn't Scherzel come and talk to us about it? And he's like, well, since y'all have been talking shit about how she stole the fucking ship heart, she wasn't really sure she should come and see you guys. And Glass is like, come on. We're not going to fucking attack her. Don't be an idiot. We're not idiots ourselves. But he says Scherzel is within her rights to demand the return of her child. Abbess Glass corrects him and says her ward. And he says adopted child. So now Zoli is Scherzel's heir, which is a pretty big fucking deal that she managed to do that. Like, adopt her, and not only adopt her and make her an heir, but do this without Zoli ever leaving the convent. Like, they didn't know about this development. And the abbess says, Ervone, you come to us with a matter properly covered by church law. Scherzel should take any concerns she may have to High Priest Nevis, and they will be dealt with through the correct ecclesiastical channels. And Abbess Glass, it turns out that it's kind of, the timing of all of this is sort of weird, and she's sort of trying to play this to her advantage. So it says, after 3 years of narrowing, the corridor ran with rumors of fresh wars. When the ice advanced, something else had to give. Such times were poor ones to remind an emperor that some of the empire's most deadly resources were not his to control, but must be lent to his purpose through the good will of the church. So basically, what she's doing is being like, if she wants this bad, she's going to have to go to a higher authority. She can't just come in here and do whatever she wants. To which Ervone is like, are you sure you want to fuck with this? Because I seem to see a hand that is half melted away. You may want to rethink pushing this person. And she just straight up goes, is there anything else? And just like steamrolls right over him. I am in love with Abbess Glass, just saying. So Zoli says that she doesn't want to leave. And he tells her, Scherzel has a lot to teach you. Saphira is waiting to resume your weapons training. Scherzel can call upon the instructors from the academy itself. I will ask the Abbess for guidance, Zoli said. And I will give it. Glass hid her surprise and placed both hands flat upon the table. Now, have you any more business to discuss, Ervone? It is a poor decision, Abbess. Even so. And she knows that she's doing something here. But she kind of has to do it. So I am super interested. I'm way over time, but I just... Next time, Martin, for the next episode, I may underread just a drop so that I have more time to talk about everything, because I had to skip over some things. And I don't think I skipped anything crucial, but nevertheless, there's some fun stuff that I wish I had gotten a chance to address. Martin commented, while Wheel and Rose and the Sister Superior are the Sister Superiors, I think, most of her plotting is done with Apple and Tallow, and what Apple knows, Kettle will also know, so maybe it was planned. Maybe. That would be nice. I would like to think that things were like in hand in that fashion. All right, so I'm going to wrap, but I'm super excited about this book. I am very excited to be back in the convent. I really didn't think we were coming back here. I thought that Nona was going to have to turn her back on this after everything that had happened. And I kind of thought Nona might get kicked out here and that the story would continue on with her, like, having to make her way in the world. So I'm relieved, but I'm also still prepared for maybe her not staying here much longer. I don't know. We will see. But thank you all again so much for listening. Thank you, Martin, for commissioning this. And I will be seeing you hopefully soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers!
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.